So let me begin by thanking you guys for showing up today. We had a little bit of a preview at what I'm talking about when we met together a few months ago. And at that time, February seemed like it was far in the distance, but here we are. So thank you for the invitation. What I'm going to show you today is an add-on that I've been building for payment processing. And my goal is to get this uploaded into the Claris marketplace after another couple of features are put in. So I'm just going to begin by talking for a moment about the marketplace. I have an announcement that I can make about something else that was recently added to the marketplace in case you want to have a look at that. It's called ClickSend. It's an integration solution for sending SMS messages from FileMaker using a script and a very simple API to use, and it's all fully documented and it's free. ClickSend is a company in Australia that has a wonderful package, and I think a lot of FileMaker developers will find this useful. It's more economical than some other things that I've seen that are available for purchase for a lot more money than zero. But for today, we're talking about the payment processing. 9 years ago is when I first started presenting this to user groups. In Dallas, it was at the time, in 2017, we had insert from URL. It wasn't new at the time. We'd had it for about almost 5 years by then. I have been doing the payment processing since around 2010 or 2011. And before we had insert from URL, I was using the web viewer as a method of transmitting information. But the first time that I presented it to the user group was an effort to have them see the benefit of actually building payment processing into the solutions that they build for their clients. And then a few years later, well, actually a few months later, we got JSON functions. So I wasn't using them at the time, but I could see that that was going to become interesting for all of us going forward. So in November of 2024, now that's about 15 months ago, there was a presentation at Harmonic Data in Dallas about integrating with Square. And that was instrumental for me because I know that Square is an expensive way to operate and that they don't have any kind of partner arrangements for those of us who are developers. So I waited for the Q&A, and at the end, when it was my turn to ask a question, I said, how much is Square paying you to give them business? And of course, his answer was, well, they're not paying me anything. I have to pay them. So we had a meeting privately after the user group, and he began to see the sense of what I'm showing you today. I presented the first time my add-on solution in June of last year in Dallas. I came there in person. The solution wasn't, or my add-on wasn't completely finished at the time, but I wanted to get some reaction from a user group that I knew well. And the next time I presented it was in September to the Kentucky group. I intended to present it to the entire full access conference. As it happened, my meeting room location was at the top of the hill, and I had only a few people in attendance there. And then your group was doing a presentation about Square back in November. So we had a lot of discussion about this, although I couldn't do my presentation at that time. And then the Denver group had me do this presentation to them in December. Now, there are other systems out there that are popular, and they basically break down into three groups. You've got the banks, some software platforms, and gateways. The banks aren't limited to just the 5 of them that I'm showing here. They're probably any bank that you do business with would be happy to give you a virtual terminal in their web operation for you to do transactions. Obviously, QuickBooks is very well known, and so is PayPal and Shopify. And what I'm more concerned with, and you'll see today as I show this to you, is the gateways. There are quite a number of them around, and they vary in price. The 2 that are shown at the bottom of that list, Network Merchants in Chicago and CardPoint in Florida, are the ones that I work with the most. Square, as you can see in the Trustpilot ratings, has a much better reputation than any of the others, and they're pretty dominant in the world. They're well known and easy for people to sign up with. But the difference between Stripe and Square is basically, even though they're both popular payment processors, they cater to different businesses, and neither of them has a partner program. So in the case of Square, they're the kind of entity that you would see in retail operations. Very often they've got their own special terminal. I know when I go to the movies and there's a yogurt shop next door, I use their terminal to pay the bill. Stripe is more designed for people who want to build things into their websites. And when their transaction volume is high enough, it isn't a bad system. In the financial world, there are basically three entities that I'm using, and obviously lots of others as well. Fiserv is at the top of the heap. They're a big multinational company, and they're in the financial services sphere, and they work with banks and credit unions and many businesses to do account processing. So even though I have no direct interaction with them, when I process a charge, ultimately it's Fiserv that puts that money into my bank account. In the middle, I've got Card Connect, which is a partner of Fiserv operating in Florida. And they've been in business now for about 25 years, and they call their payment gateway CardPoint. And that's for the processing of not only credit cards, but also electronic checks. The one that I discovered back in 2010 or 2011 was Network Merchants. And the way I found them was that Authorized Net was then charging $10 a month and 10 cents per transaction, whereas NMI was $5 a month and 5 cents per transaction. But there's another reason that made them really, really worthwhile for me, and I'll be showing that to you today. The benefits are similar with both of them. Whether it's CardPoint or NMI, they're all accepting every kind of credit card and electronic checks. Their interchange is optimized so that people are paying only 1% or more than the basis. Both of them are point-to-point encrypted. They have different kinds of integration for efficiency so that you can decide which is the best way for you to integrate with FileMaker. And what I like also is that you can use the FileMaker security module with different privilege sets to decide how the permissions should be granted for logging in from whatever the device is, whether it's WebDirect or FileMaker Go or Pro. Everything, of course, is PCI compliant, and you can tokenize the credit cards or bank accounts so that once you have a customer's account information on file, the recurring transactions and repeat transactions can benefit from not having to re-enter it. I'll also be showing you today one special feature that I use all the time with NMI for the tokenized cards. Next business day funding is something that you don't get with Stripe or Square. In my case, I'm waiting one business day for, or I should say next business day for Visa, MasterCard, Discover, and American Express is one additional day. Typically, business or personal checking accounts or even savings accounts will clear in 3 to 5 days. I haven't found any way to predict exactly when something will clear. I did some work last year for one of my clients to try to predict it based on routing numbers, and I found that it just didn't work with any kind of consistency. But typically within 3 or 5 business days, checks will be reported back as okay or not, if in case somebody doesn't have funds in their account. But the main reason that I'm showing this to FileMaker developers is to plant into your mind the idea that you can be earning passive income every month after you've completed the integration and you have customers using whatever you have built for them. So the difference between CardPoint and NMI is in the method of posting the transaction. With CardPoint, you're having to use the API and have a curl object that gets sent with the insert from URL script step. With NMI, you don't need the curl. there's a simple insert from URL with a URL that you compose in FileMaker as a calculated value. And it strings together the different things that are necessary about the credit card or the address or company name or whatever the variables are that have to result in a successful transaction. Now, the reason why I'm recommending this for FileMaker is because your skills in developing solutions for customers don't have to stop at the time that you're finished with whatever their business application is. A little bit of additional integration is worth it because it gives the customer the benefit of something that's totally built in. And as a FileMaker developer, you can offer them that. E-checks are becoming more and more popular. It costs the merchant less than credit cards. And in my opinion, when you are processing payments for your customers, the operation doesn't end when you charge the credit card. So in the case of the demo that I've built for this Cha-Ching app, I put in about 100 demonstration invoices with JSON objects so that people can see how to create the payment record after they have charged the credit card or bank account. I'll show you in a little bit later what I call the round trip for getting an order, issuing an invoice, getting paid, and then applying the payment in FileMaker so that the customer's balance is automatically updated. All of that productivity and security is something that I think customers appreciate. It adds to the value that you bring to the equation. It's more convenient for them. It will probably also lower their costs because the rates and the fees charged by the bigger banks, I think, are excessive because they're taking advantage of the ignorance of the customer. When somebody isn't aware that they're really eligible for getting a better rate, once they have an account signed up, they'll go on and on and on, month after month, paying more than they should. And when you're working directly with a gateway like CardPoint or NMI, you're working with the best possible rates. And there's passive income that you will earn even if you're not working with the client. You could have a customer who is idle with you for 3 or 4 months in a row if they don't need your services, but you're still earning the income on whatever transactions they're processing. It adds up to some worthwhile money. So if you take, let's say, the middle row in this chart that I made, if you have a customer who's doing annual volume of $3 million, that translates to $250,000 a month. And if the effective rate of the transactions is 2.25%, that really comes out to $350 in your pocket every month. Obviously, the more that a customer of yours will transact, the better it is for you. But even if it's a small account, it's what I have always regarded as found money. I did the work, I did the development work, and once a month, there's an additional deposit that falls into my lap. So the hierarchy that I'm thinking of developing for the FileMaker community is where I will have as many developers as possible who come along and decide to do this kind of integration, and as many customers as each of them have will develop something you could call a pyramid, but it's not a scheme in that sense. But the way that I'm doing the split of the revenue is that for every dollar that is transacted and split between the developers and myself, I'm getting 20% and you are getting 80%. Now, when you look into the Cha-Ching app that I've built, and later on I'll show you how you can get a hold of it and begin using it, the first thing that you would do for a prospective merchant is complete this application. And it's got 5 tabs across the top. So you'll start with the business information, which is basically name and address, phone number, and so forth. In this case, you can see that I have put in a web address, and I'll show you in a moment why that matters. Any place in this application where something is sensitive, so for instance, at the bottom, you'll see the tax ID is using FileMaker's concealed edit box so that it's not exposed. The next step is the ownership. As long as the owner of the company owns more than or 80% or more, you only have to fill in one owner. But if for some reason they have a partner and the primary owner owns less than 80%, then there's a space that will appear for you to put in who the other owner is. The banking information is quite simple. There's a little checkbox in case the merchant wants to keep their deposits and withdrawals in separate bank accounts. It's a simple option. You just have to put in the information for each account. Most people have it on the same account. In the processing information, here's where there's been a little bit of improvement since the last time we got together. If you notice the underlined bold item that says select the industry MCC code, what that does is it's opening up a, excuse me, I forgot about something here. On the right-hand side, in this case, there's an e-commerce of 20%. That means that out of all the transactions that this company allegedly produces, 20% of them are done on their website. In that case, this little pop-up dialog box will remind them that you need to put in the web URL on the business information. So if somebody was to click that button for the MCC codes, what I was able to give them was this portal where alphabetically there's a list of about 650 different business types. And I found it to be really, really annoying and time-consuming to try to find the one that's most relevant to the merchant. So I saw this as an opportunity to begin using FileMaker's AI. And that new feature is now in the system so that what will happen is, I'll show it to you on the next slide. When you submit the application, what happens is you get back in the JSON result, you get a merchant ID, which is like just an identification number that's been assigned to it. And then it also gives you a URL that you can use for yourself to see what the customer would see when he's notified that his application is pending. So here is a shot of the website that you would get to with that URL. And then what the customer sees in their email is something that tells them that their application is ready to be signed. So when they click the button that says sign my application, they're taken into the interface where they create their own password and then they're ready to go. So it's quick and you can begin earning money as soon as this procedure is complete. So the next step is this, the integration that you will begin. And I give you three options for how to do that. You can either drag and drop the add-on into somebody's database. And when you do that, you're processing transactions for only that merchant and only that database. And you make your connections in the relationship graph to whatever tables there are for invoices and customers to pull the necessary data. The second way of doing it is what I call a virtual terminal. Here, instead of dragging it onto a database as an add-on, you can just run that FMP12 file on any FileMaker server and point to it from as many merchants as you might be doing business with. So as long as it's on a FileMaker server that's accessible from anywhere in the world, you can have one instance of Cha-Ching handling the work that you do for as many merchants as you desire. And the third method is to do a custom deployment where you can take the schema that's in it, for the list of scripts and the field definitions and so on, and you can build your own custom deployment. Now for today's meeting, I have done a little bit of work to protect my own interests because I know that these recordings get posted on YouTube and other places, and I wouldn't want to expose my own credit card number and or account numbers in banks to total strangers. So I'm using the concealed edit box feature in order to hide it temporarily. So the way I do it is I've got two fields stacked one on top of the other. The concealed edit box is on top of an ordinary field, and I'm using a math function or text function to mask whatever the actual card number is. And the reason for that is so that you can comfortably have somebody in customer service talk with their customer about their credit card, even though they can't see the actual number. So they can say, well, I've got your Visa card on file and it ends in 1216. That way the customer knows what account is being used. So the concealed edit box is a handy way to format fields that have confidential information. And that's just not just the credit cards, but also social security numbers, driver's licenses, anything that you think shouldn't be visible to users. And the real data becomes visible because if you click into the field that has the bullets in the foreground, what you're going to see is the field that's behind it. And I'm applying that mask using a filter so that people can have the kind of conversations that I was just describing. And for today's presentation, I've got 4 different examples going. Direct post to NMI for a credit card and direct post for a bank account, and likewise the JSON API to CardPoint for a credit card and for a bank account. So the tokenization is visible in Cha-Ching with these 2 little checkboxes that you see at the top of these little windows. In both cases, on the left, you're looking at a credit card. On the right, you're looking at a bank account. And these bullet characters, obviously, like I said, are hiding the real number, but it's underneath it in FileMaker so it can be transmitted. So what happens when it gets added to the NMI vault is you see a custom dialog that tells you so, and a checkbox appears so that thereafter you know that that card is already tokenized. And the same thing applies with the bank account. So in this case, I'm looking at my own account where it shows that I've got both a credit card and a bank account added to the vault. The vault is just a nickname that NMI has given to what they call their customer vault. And in that vault, what happens is in using Cha-Ching, you get back a dialog telling you that the card has been successfully added. And for PCI compliance, you don't have to be concerned anymore about whatever's in FileMaker because it's been masked. Now, I mentioned before that there's a feature with the vault that I really enjoy using. And what it does is it automatically updates credit cards so that if somebody's card has gone past its expiration date and it's been given a new expiration date, maybe even they've gotten a new card in the mail with a new security code, nothing has to change because the basic information is automatically updated by the NMI gateway. And if you were to log into the NMI gateway, you'd see that they also are doing their own kind of masking. In this case, they're exposing the first 6 digits and the last 4 of a credit card, where in FileMaker, I'm exposing only the first 1 and the last 4. If I go into the NMI customer vault and search, you can see that in this example, you're looking at my bank account, which has gotten the vault ID of 158-B and a credit card 158-A. So I'm just using the customer ID number in whatever database it is and appending a letter to it to indicate whether it's a credit card or a bank account. Now, occasionally you have to delete something from the vault. For example, if a customer's card was reported as lost or stolen. So you have this simple interface where you're choosing from a value list, whether you're adding, deleting, or updating. An update might be something like a change of address. And then when it's deleted, you get the dialog telling you so, and it clears all values from FileMaker. So in an example where something's been deleted and a customer reports that their card was reported lost or stolen, they have to obviously get back to you with whatever the replacement information is, and then you submit that. Now, in the submission of transactions in the Cha-Ching add-on, I've broken it up into 4 steps, and I'm going to illustrate that for you here. As a developer, you wouldn't want to have it pause and confront the user with what's happening in each step. So you would build a script that strings all those steps together. So this is just done in order for users like yourself to understand what's happening in a step-by-step manner. So we begin where we've got a merchant. In this case, we're using my own company, and it lists the users in my company who are, the customers that I have. And the first step is to select one of those customers. So I've selected myself as the customer for this demo. And then for each of these 4 steps, you get an explanation in Cha-Ching of what's happening in the selection of the transaction variables. Most of the time, it'll be the minimal set that are needed. And then you're making a choice of what kind of a transaction is. Is it a sale? Is it a refund? Is it a credit? Maybe it's just authorizing a card. Most of the time, it'll be sales. And then you're putting in the transaction details for that sale. So in this example, I'm filling in a date and an invoice number, some kind of a reference phrase that might be relevant for that sale. And a PO number might have been given to me by the customer. And of course, there has to be a dollar amount. And then the last of the 4 steps is the selection of the variables. So there's a lot going on in Cha-Ching about the construction of what I call variable sets. In this case, you've got a variable set that's been chosen for a certain kind of payment, in this case, a sale. And also in this case, the card has not yet been tokenized. So the variables that'll be submitted include the card number, the expiration date, the amount, also the first name, last name, a company if there is one, address, city, state, and zip, and so forth. You don't have to use them all, but those are what I would consider to be the minimal variables. The list of variables is hundreds and hundreds long. So if you wanted to have certain variables that have to do with freight or taxes, whatever, that you can build your own variable sets for them. Once they're built, you'll just be using them over and over again. So in this case, the next step is that I'm choosing the variable set that's going to be used for this $475 transaction by clicking on sale, either a check or a credit card. And then it now tells me that it's ready to be submitted. So you can see that in the portal on the right, the information has been gathered from the related fields in the database, the address, the city, the zip, the security code for the credit card. And I've put this little rectangle there just to cover up what is otherwise a real credit card number. And I've also blurred the password. And then there's a reminder that Cha-Ching will put up to tell you that you can only void transactions before the closing time of a daily batch. So if for some reason you run a transaction and you realize that it was an error and shouldn't have been run, or if you're doing something for test purposes, you can void it, and it will never be visible on the customer's monthly statement. But if it's after the closing time of a daily batch, then you would run a refund the following day, and then the customer would see both transactions on their monthly statement. When the transaction comes back, or in this case, as it's being submitted, this is what the text string looks like for an HTTP post. So insert from URL would consider this long string to be the URL, which has in it the address and the dollar amount, all the necessary details that you saw on the previous screen. All the little red dots obviously are FileMaker's spell checking, so you can have to ignore that. And then when the transaction comes back approved, it shows up in a log, so we can keep a running log of all the transactions that Cha-Ching is processing. And I'm giving you a JSON string that you can use if you want to use that to create a payment record. In this case, it happened to be a void, and I captured the result of a successful void. Then if you were to go back into the NMI gateway, you would be able to see that you have on the same date, September 21st, I ran an approved credit card sale, and the check sale is pending approval because it takes a few days for the bank to report back that the funds were put into your account. So I mentioned before that I call this the round trip or the home run. You begin in any typical business transaction by creating a sale. Can't charge anybody money unless you've got a sale. The second step is that you would be creating an invoice. And of course, we've all done that in FileMaker. We make a layout, we create an invoice. We used to send it by fax. Now we make PDFs. And then the third step is to get paid. But you really complete the process when you take that payment and you apply it into a table that corresponds to the invoices, or it could be in the invoice table itself, but you're indicating the amount that you've collected. It might be the invoice payment in full, it might be a partial payment. And I've included in Cha-Ching a layout that can be used for an accounts receivable aging, so that anytime a customer wants to see their accounts balance this way, you can easily run that report. What I'm going to say now is probably something you all know already, but I'm just saying it just in case, because again, I know this is being recorded. I never want the number of days due to be an unstored calculation. I never want the open balance to be an unstored calculation, because things change day by day. Tomorrow, something that was 91 days due today will be 92 days. So I always make a scheduled server script that will run in the middle of the night to just update all these balances and the number of days due. And it allows you to run this report much, much faster than if you wanted FileMaker to be calculating a lot of unstored values. And of course, if something's happening during the course of the day, it'll update that one ad hoc as it's happening. So I'm suggesting that when you get your hands on this add-on, that you begin by creating your own merchant account. And the reason why is that it'll give you an ability, if you want to use it for your own business, to practice what you preach, become familiar with the way that payment processing works, probably reduce your own company's processing costs if you're now using something like a bank virtual terminal or Square. And it'll also increase your own security. If you think about a customer who uses a bank's virtual terminal, any employee who's authorized to log into the bank account has the ability to run charges. They also have the ability to run credits and give money back. Something I learned many, many years ago from my CPA was that you want to prevent fraud right within your own company. And FileMaker's privilege sets allow you to do that. So you can decide who's allowed to charge a customer, who's allowed to give a refund or a credit. Generally speaking, I think you'll reduce your overhead if you're not having to spend money on unnecessary fees or get involved in time-wasting procedures. So you gain the experience and the know-how, which is like training where you're learning for yourself, making it easier for you to teach your own customers. To get started, the Cha-Ching app is available on my FileMaker server, which is shown to you here if you want to make a note of that. You'll log in with the account FMDEV, and the password is the word developer, and you'll be able to create a merchant record for yourself. And as soon as you log out, it's hidden from view for whoever's the next person logging in. As soon as the add-on file is ready, and there's only one more thing that I need to add now that the AI feature is in it, I will just directly send it to anybody who has gone in and created a record for themselves and requested it. There's an application form that you can go through and you'll fill it in for yourself. There are partner documents that I'm going to show you in a minute. And there's also this recording that was done back in June of 2025, where after the meeting was over, after the user group meeting was over, there were questions about how to drop an add-on into a FileMaker database. So we recorded a little bit of additional information on that. So you can go into that URL to see it. To create the merchant record, the first thing you'll do is you'll click the setup button on the home screen of the application. And then that will take you to a place where you'll see Hello Developer in place of what's usually there for people who are not FileMaker developers. And you can explore all the different variables that exist. You can decide whether you would be deploying it as an add-on, a virtual terminal, or custom. And then you'll complete the simple form for yourself. So in this silly little example, we've got Henry Ford filling in the information for the Ford Motor Company. And when that gets submitted, you'll be able to go to the next step, which is the processing information. You can explore all the different tabs in the application that I showed you before. And there's also a downloadable PDF that's an example so that you have in your hands and everything that you actually just filled in. You have a copy of that. Now, this is the new feature that I was telling you about earlier. It used to be a portal. Well, actually, I shouldn't say it used to be because I've turned it into a tab control so that both of them are now in the application. The portal just presents a list of MCC descriptions. And when you choose any one of them with the blue arrow, it goes into the field that you see. But to make it easier for people, we're now using AI. So if somebody were to type the word fly fishing travel, you would see a list of things that FileMaker's AI believes are similar enough, and they're in descending order by their cosine similarity so that you can choose the one that's most relevant. There's a 6-page PDF package that you'll be given where you can fill in the kind of simple PDF forms. You don't have to print it out. You can submit it and send it back. You're actually establishing a partner relationship between yourself and Card Connect in order to be paid the commission every month. And it's one per company. So if there's a company that wants to handle the money every month by apportioning it out somehow to the different developers in the company, they can do that. Or if they prefer, they can have each of the developers in the company have their own application filled out. And then it also has, as part of that package, a typical W-9, doesn't cost anything, and there's no risk in that. And when you submit that, you'll be engaged in a way that when your customers are signed up, that way you're known as the developer associated with whatever volume they transact. The merchant table is a little bit complicated. So what I've tried to do is do a lot of annotation in the relationship graphs to explain what the different fields are all about. In the case of the add-on, as I said before, there's only one merchant record, but in a virtual terminal, you would have as many merchants as you choose to deal with. In the custom deployment, you don't need to worry about either of those. It'll be in your own relationship graph. And then there's a PDF user manual that you can also download. In your own copy of Cha-Ching, you might use this as a prospect list so that as you put in your different customers who you feel like you want to engage with for this, little by little, you'll assign their merchant IDs and you'll be able to work with them. Here I'm showing you how I've tried to break out the graph in a way that explains how things are connected. One comment that I'll make to you is that just to make sure that fields in Cha-Ching don't conflict with any fields that you have in your own databases, they all start with the letters CHCH. And so I consider these the steps that you would follow to become successful, starting with learning about what does your client's sales and collection picture look like. Believe it or not, I've spoken with some developers who are doing work perhaps on their customers' inventory and never paid attention to how they're getting paid. So it's worth learning about. And then what you would do is use Cha-Ching to create a merchant account for each of your clients. You'd get the merchant ID number, and when you submit the banking information with any attachments, and it would come back to them for their signature. And then the FileMaker work begins, because once you've gotten the merchant approved, now you have to integrate with whatever their database is. Typically, it's the invoice table and a customer table. And then you'll have to configure or write your own script so that you can apply the payment after it's been confirmed as successful to that invoice and keep their balances up to date. That's actually a time saver. There are a lot of people who have their employees go online to the bank's virtual terminal and they charge the credit card, but they haven't done anything in FileMaker to indicate that that has been accomplished. So there's a tutorial document that's very detailed, explaining what each and every field is about, each and every script, and you can download that from the introduction page. Now, about FileMaker add-ons, we got add-ons back in version 19, and there are some of them that are in the marketplace, and you can find them there. There's a few videos. The best video I've seen is the one that Todd Geist made a few years ago. I think Jeremy Brown's name is on it, but it's Todd Geist's voice doing the demo back in 2020. This is a good point for me to stop and ask if you have questions. And I have some additional thoughts that I put into this slide deck that I can go through that talk a little bit about APIs, but I want to make sure that I'm not doing all the talking if anybody has any questions for me. I'm looking at pictures to make sure I haven't put you guys to sleep.
We're still here, just hovering.
Okay.
Well, I was curious, what is your income from it? I'm not talking what from each transaction, what percentage do you make, or how does that work?
Well, it depends on the transaction volume that customers are generating. So in my case, as I'm getting a little older and I'm doing less work than before, I'm receiving a few $100s every month based on the transaction volume of just 3 or 4 companies who are still my customers. Unfortunately, the pandemic cost me some money because about a half a dozen of my regular customers either decided to retire and close up shop, or they sold their business to somebody else. In one case, the sale to somebody else didn't stop the transaction processing that was built into it. So the more that your customers are doing in terms of sales volume, the greater your income will be. Earlier this morning, I looked at that chart that I showed you before with the different levels of money, and I compared what is $350 compared to $3 million in annual sales, and it's like 1/10,000th of a percent. Wow. So it's a small increment, but it's money that is otherwise being taken by companies like Shopify or Intuit when they charge fees, and you get nothing out of it.
Yeah.
Dennis?
Sir.
What merchant processors are you have you tested with your system?
I have tested for 15 years now with NMI. I love the fact that I don't have to use JSON. Before I became adept at it, I don't have to use JSON in order to submit a transaction. But as I've worked with their documentation, I've found that if I wanted to use them, it would still be a more lengthy script and a more complicated procedure than writing a single URL string that you submit with insert from URL and you get back an immediate successful result.
And so you've had no issues with NMI?
I love the people at NMI. They are available for questions if I call their support line. I have never had a problem with anything being in error. I can show you their user interface. So if I go to nmi.com and sign in, I'm signing in as a merchant. And if I haven't been there for a few days, it would give me a 2-factor authentication with a number. So it's a very simple thing. I can either use their virtual terminal, anything for credit cards, electronic checks. If I want to see the customers who are in the vault, I can click on the list and submit, and they would all be in a list view. If I go to the transaction reports, let's say I want to look at recent transactions, so we'll go back to the 16th, and it shows me there was a batch that closed yesterday. And if I click on view the transactions, it'll show me that it was a credit card transaction of $1,887. If I want to drill in more closely, I can see everything I need to see about it there. In the options, I have to only go there when I first set up the account. So for any of my customers, there might be several user accounts. So in my case, I've got 3 user accounts. If I go back and I want to set the, let's say, the settlement schedule, I want my batch to close every day at 5 p.m. So automatically, whatever has been approved for checks or credit cards, it'll close automatically. If I go back to, let's see, what else could I show you? Let's say here are the user accounts, and we're going to take, I have an account for FileMaker. If I take a look at the FileMaker account, it has a variety of permissions, and I can set what each user is allowed to do. I do this in the beginning when I set up the account, and then frankly, I just forget about it and leave it as is. No reason to go back and change it unless somebody disappears or is new. So this is as easy as the NMI interface is.
Yeah, it looks pretty nice.
Yeah. And I give this to my customers so that they're able to log on and see whatever transaction reporting they want to see. It could be as simple as, see if I do something here. If I go back to, instead of February 1st, let's make this 11/1/2025, and through today's, and I'll say the transaction type, let's say I just want to look at checks, and I only want to look at complete transactions. So it'll give me a report. So in this case, there were no checks. You can have recurring transactions that are in there. Somebody's, getting a regular monthly or a quarterly bill. I very seldom have to go into a lot of these, but there it is.
So how do you differentiate this kind of business, like as opposed to like Square or Stripe?
Say that one more time, Mike.
How would you differentiate this kind of business as opposed to Square or Stripe?
Oh, well, if you were working with Stripe, and you could see the use of Stripe in that same Todd Geist video. In fact, he's using the add-on topic in using Stripe as his demonstration of how you could drag something onto FileMaker. The problem is you're dealing with Stripe's rules and fees, and you are not getting paid for that.
Mm-hmm.
So the basic differentiation that I feel like is here I'm a partner in the transaction game, rather than just signing somebody up for a service and having that service take money out of every one of their transactions. This is just sort of an editorial comment that these are steps that I have yet to do before I submit it to the marketplace. I've got a lot of cleanup in the database to get rid of a lot of obsolete scripts and things that aren't necessary for distribution. I am working on trying to find a Clover device for point of sale use cases. One fellow who here in Colorado wants to use this in a retail situation was expecting me to have a device that you could use to read the credit card. That's bordering on the edge of legality because you don't want to have people getting their credit cards skimmed. So what we've come up with so far as a temporary solution is to use an iPad mini so that the retail merchant can hand the iPad mini to the customer. And what's on the layout is the places for them to fill in their credit card information. And it could even put a web viewer there for a signature if they want it. And it's not as convenient as what you have with Stripe or Square when you're in a retail situation and you put your card into the slot and it's automatically doing the entire round trip. But in those situations, the yogurt shop example I gave you, they're not running FileMaker. So they don't have a need to integrate that way. What they have is more or less a cash register situation that I'm not a part of at all.